Hey everybody, let's talk about creating a mock scrapbook page using Photoshop, layers and effects. All right, here we go. So what we've got is a background page which I've collected. It has kind of a scrapbook feel, kind of layered paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some photos to this and compose our page. I'm going to show you a couple different methods for doing it as you walk through the beginning steps of making composite images. So first things first, we have a collection of images outside in a folder, and we've got this as our background. It's a good idea to make sure that your main image is the actual size you need for print or for web or whatever purpose you're going to be using. So make sure that you start with your largest piece, or whatever your frame is going to be, whatever your main picture window is going to be, make sure it's the right size. So one way to do that is to go up to image size under the image menu and make sure that it's set to the right proportion. Now let's just say that I was going to use this for print. That means that I need to have a resolution of 300 and that the pixel dimension, the inches, need to be the right printer size. So let's try that. I'm going to click resample, and then I'm going to set the resolution to 300, and I'm going to make my width 10 inches so that if you look at that, my height is just about 7.818, which is almost 8 inches. I want to make that 8 inches. So I'm going to stretch this a little bit. To be able to stretch the dimensions independently, what you do is you uncheck this little chain so the proportions are unconstrained. So I can now replace that number with 8. So here I have 10 by 8 or 8 by 10 at 300, which is about print size, which is what I want if I was going to later on print this. So that's something to keep in mind as you're working. Keep track of your main picture dimensions. So I'm going to click OK. It's going to interpolate my picture. Hit Command 0, bring it back to middle. And there I have my page. Now I know that my image and my file are the right size for the intended purpose. Now let's start by gathering some of our assets. So I'm going to go to the File menu, and I'm going to click Open. This is one way to drop things into your file. I'm going to highlight the family beach picture, click Open, and now I have this picture ready to go for my background. This is the first method for bringing pictures into a master file. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this. So what I need to do is first select the entire image. So that is Command A, or under the Select menu, it is Select All. And then I need to copy it, Command C, or under the Edit menu, Copy, or if I'm on a PC, Control C. Then I go back to the original file and I'm going to hit Paste. Command V, or under the Edit menu, I'm going to go Paste. Now that picture is there separate as a layer. And if I have the Move tool selected, I can move it around and position it where I want it to be positioned on my screen. Now let's say I wanted to tilt it. I could tilt it slightly by going to the Edit menu and selecting Transform. And under that, I can scale or rotate it as needed. Let's say I want to rotate a little bit. I'm going to go Edit, Transform, Rotate, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move my cursor over the corner and just kind of edit it, move it, tilt it. When I'm finished, I just need to hit Return on my keyboard, and that's going to commit to that rotation in that position. You can see the layer now reflects that on the screen. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a layer effect to add a little bit of a shadow to this to make it look like it has a little dimension. So under the FX button, if you look down at the layer palette, there's a little layer style. I'm going to add that, and I'm going to select drop shadow from that little menu. Now, depending on whether or not I've used the drop shadow already, it's going to remember that. So these settings might not be quite right. So I want to adjust this drop shadow I'm going to soften the drop shadow, decrease the size, decrease the spread, decrease the distance. You know, so somewhere on mine, it's like 10 pixels distant, 10%. Trying to make it more obvious on the screen, so maybe increase a little bit. So there you have that kind of soft shadow underneath the photo. And it's set to multiply in the transparency effect, depending on what I want on the opacity. I can modify and adjust and then click OK. So now I've got my, my picture layered on top of that little background. Now the last time we copy and pasted the picture in here, I'm going to show you another method for bringing a picture into your file. And that's going to be using place. So I'm going to go File, and here I'm going to say Place Embedded. This is another useful way for putting pictures inside other pictures in Photoshop. So I'm going to click Place Embedded. And now this time I'm going to pick the Oahu Beach West Side picture. Click Place. And now it's going to drop that photo in there. And notice how this looks a little bit different than a copy-paste scenario. This time it has a little X on it. It's a little picture box. And I can grab it and move it and slide it around the page. I can even scale it inside the window while it's selected. And when I'm done moving it, scaling it, and positioning it, I hit return on my keyboard, or I click the little check mark up above, and that commits to the transformation. Now you'll notice that this picture, the icon is a little bit different. It has a little icon square in the corner. That means that this is a placed embedded smart object. What does that mean? Well, that means that that image is not rasterized. It's not flattened. It's not part of the file, actually. It's editable, but you can't paint on that layer. You can't actually cut or erase that layer. It's just placed as an object. And that's a good thing in the sense that when I scale it or move it, it's not going to destroy the pixels and it's not going to reduce the resolution. There are more complex ways to use smart objects, which we'll get into in another video. But just keep in mind that placing objects is a good way for your original image to not be damaged and to keep the high resolution version available for your editing layers. So I'm just going to drag this over here, and maybe I want to reposition this behind the family picture, so I'm going to move the layer down. And here's something that you can do that is kind of simple and easy. I already did a drop shadow on layer number 1. I'd like to reuse that same exact drop shadow on the new Oahu picture I put in here. Well, use your keyboard and press Control and click on that layer. This is also possible with a right click on your mouse. And it brings up a little submenu of options. This is going to allow me to copy the layer style. So I'm going to click Copy Layer Style. Then I'm going to select the beach picture. I'm going to do the same thing, Control click or right click on that layer. And this time I'm going to select Paste Layer Style. And notice it duplicated that shadowy layer, that shadowy effect, and dropped it onto that picture. So it copied from one to the other. I'm going to go ahead and collapse these and put them in place. All right, we're going to drop in one more picture, and then I'm going to let you work on your own. This time I am going to go ahead and do File and Place, Place Embedded. And I'm going to pick up the starfish. And then I'm going to click Place, and it's going to drop into my page. Let's say I'm going to move it over here, scale it a little bit, maybe down here. And it would be nice if it kind of overlapped the photo. I'm going to click Return on my keyboard to lock it in place. Well, you probably have noticed the problem I have here. This starfish has a background, and that's going to create a problem for me. Well, if I want to edit that background and actually remove it and select it and delete it, I have to do something to that smart object first. Notice how if I switched over to the eraser, it's going to tell me, no, you can't mess with that layer. It needs to be rasterized first. Okay, this is one scenario where when you have a placed image, you're going to have to rasterize it before you can modify it. So I'm going to go and select layer. I'm going to go to Smart Object. And I'm going to select Rasterize. It's also there under the same menu under Layer, Rasterize, Smart Object. And watch what it does. I click Smart Object, Rasterize. And notice how that starfish layer returned to a normal layer. And now I'm able to erase. Now, I don't want to erase the background on this. That's not really an efficient way to do that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use the magic wand. So I'm going to switch here to the magic wand tool. And because the background on this starfish is white, I'm going to be able to select that piece by itself. So I'm going to click magic wand in the white area, and it's a stark white background, so it's going to be pretty good about selecting it. So all I have to do is hit delete, and it's going to remove that background from that layer. Pretty good. Now I just need to add a shadow, and I can use that copy layer effect. So right click or control click, copy layer style, select the starfish layer, right click or control click, and you paste that layer style, and now you got your shadow in place. All right, so there you have it. That's a quick way to add a few items, to build a little scrapbook page, add some effects, and deal with some placed objects. All right, so hopefully that helps. See you next time. Take care, guys.